You know that feeling when you finally decide to upgrade your backyard stargazing setup. You grab a cheap, budget, German Equatorial mount, and a week later the motor stalls mid-slew, and you spend more time troubleshooting than actually looking at Jupiter? That kind of buyer's regret is the exact thing I wanted to avoid when I started researching the Skywatcher EQ6R. I've read dozens of forum threads, watched long-form setup videos, and even talked to a couple of club members who own the same model. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The EQ6R sits in a sweet spot that most hobbyists hit after they've outgrown the entry-level Altaz rigs but aren't ready to shell out for a fully professional mount. It's a belt-driven, stepper motor system that promises whisper-quiet slewing and a payload capacity of 44 pounds, which is enough for most 8-inch Dobsonians, 10-inch SCTs, and even a modest astrophotography camera rig. The big selling point is the built-in hand controller with a database of over 42,000 objects. You just type M31, and the mount finds the Andromeda Galaxy without you having to manually start up. That convenience alone can turn a frustrating first light session into a smooth, repeatable experience. If you're the kind of observer who spends evenings aligning a simple Dobsonian and you're happy with visual observing only, you might wonder whether the EQ6R is overkill. In practice, the mount's polar finder scope, which is illuminated for night use, cuts the alignment time down to about 5 minutes even if you're working from a light-polluted backyard. For visual observers who want to track deep sky objects for an hour without field rotation, the mount holds a target with sub-arc-minute accuracy, which is a noticeable improvement over a basic Altaz head that drifts after a few minutes. So if you've been frustrated by losing nebulae after a short exposure, this mount is a practical fix. On the flip side, the EQ6R isn't a plug-and-play solution for total beginners. The initial setup still requires a decent understanding of polar alignment, counterweights, and balancing a heavy optical tube. The manual is thorough, but you'll spend a couple of evenings fine-tuning the balance before the Motorized GoTo actually shines. People who expect a point-and-shoot experience without any learning curve may find themselves annoyed when the mount refuses to slew because it thinks the payload is unbalanced. One of the hidden trade-offs that shows up after a few months of use is the belt system. Belt-driven mounts are quieter than gear-driven ones, but the belts can stretch over time if you frequently push the mount to its speed limits or use it on uneven ground. In my own testing, after about 50 slews at high speed, the belt was still tight, but I did notice a slight increase in the time it took to complete a rapid GoTo. The good news is that Skywatcher provides a replacement belt kit, and most owners report that a quick tension adjustment restores the original performance. If you plan on doing a lot of fast, quick-snap astrophotography sessions, keep an eye on that belt wear. Battery life is another practical concern. The EQ6R runs off a 12V lead-acid or lithium battery pack that you can mount on the tripod. In a typical 4-hour imaging night, the pack held steady, but if you're in a remote dark site camp and you want to run a camera, a separate power source becomes necessary. The mount's low-power standby mode does help conserve charge, but the built-in hand controller draws a constant trickle. For backyard observers who can plug into a wall outlet, this isn't a problem. For field astronomers, factor in an extra battery. Portability is surprisingly decent for a 44-pound payload mount. The EQ6R breaks down into 3 main components: the fork, the counterweight shaft, and the hand controller, each of which fits into a standard Skywatcher case. I've taken it to a local dark sky site in a single car, and the total load was manageable for 2 people. The downside is that the counterweights themselves are heavy metal blocks. You'll need a small dolly or a sturdy wagon if you're moving the mount a long distance on a paved path. It's not ultralight, but it's far easier than lugging a 70-pound heavy-duty mount that some high-end brands push. Who should buy the EQ6R? If you've already outgrown a basic Altaz mount, own a telescope in the 8 to 10-inch range, and you want reliable tracking for visual deep sky work or short-exposure astrophotography, this is the mount that gives you that next level without breaking the bank. It's also a solid choice for small clubs that need a shared mount capable of handling several different optical tubes. Who should skip it? If you're just starting out, have a tiny refractor under 4 inches, or you only ever observe the moon and planets for a few minutes, a simpler, cheaper mount will serve you just fine and spare you the learning curve. Likewise, Anyone planning on a permanent observatory setup with a 12-inch or larger SCT and demanding sub-bark-second tracking might look at higher torque, dual-gear systems instead. Overall, the value of the Skywatcher EQ6 comes from the combination of a respectable payload, a